Hey everybody, good morning. It's Lainey, and I have been speaking in this group for quite some time. And we're coming up on almost 1,500 members, which is really exciting to me. And I'm here today with a sort of a coming out story of sorts, or a declaration of sorts, maybe is a better term. Um, I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts this weekend, just full of inspiration. And in the podcast, the person was talking about how, um, we were all given certain skills and certain talents when we were born. We all have certain talents, and we were all given certain pain and given certain pain for if you just have pain without purpose, then your pain becomes suffering. And really, one of the biggest sort of spiritual lessons in life is figuring out what your purpose is and being able to take your pain and your skill set that you were given, your talent set that you were given, and being able to help other people and help heal the world is really your purpose, what you're meant to do. And what I know for sure is that things that come easily to me don't come easily to other people, just like what comes easily to them doesn't come easily to me. So like sitting here and talking in a group of people, mostly who I've never met, getting up on stage and talking, writing, all that stuff, it doesn't bother me at all. Like, give me a math problem to do and I'll freeze up, or give me, some other situation and I'll freeze up. I definitely have my challenges, but I'm recognizing that part of what I was meant to do was teach and speak. That's what I've been doing for a long time. And furthermore, I am feeling very called to share, not so much in a like inappropriate sharing, revealing way, my pain, but to start weaving my own experience into what I do more and to share that more openly. And in the hopes that me sharing it, and with the intention of my sharing it, will help whoever sees this, even if it's just one person who sees this, to know that someone else has gone through something similar, that I am here to help, and that your pain doesn't have to be your legacy in your parenting, that you can lean into your pain, you can really own it, you can heal it, and in that way not pass down that legacy of pain to your own kids. And at the end of the day, whether you're co-sleeping or not, or you're breastfeeding or not, or you're doing cloth diapering or not, like none of that stuff matters. What really matters is that you are creating a beautiful connection with your kids and something that you're actually really proud of. And if that means that you have some healing to do yourself in order to achieve that, then that's the calling in your family. And I certainly becoming, I don't want to say becoming aware, because I went in with a lot of awareness that I had a lot of stuff to do to heal before becoming a mom, but reawakening maybe is the term. I'm not sure. My kids are now 12 and 14 years old. And I'm not saying that I'm a perfect parent. I'm not saying I've got it all down. What I do know is that as I entered parenting with a whole lot of pain, some of it, resolved, some of it not resolved, some of it semi-resolved, and that becoming a parent really, ripped off a lot of scabs and had me have to revisit a lot of things. And, today, just for fun, if you can call it fun, it's kind like maybe a sick version of fun, but I just Googled dysfunctional families, and I Googled like how many families are dysfunctional. And according to John Bradshaw, who is a pretty well regarded self-help expert back in the it was the 80s and the 90s, and he'd gone through 12-step programs and became a speaker. I'm not saying he's a guru of mine. I'm just saying he's pretty well regarded guy who talked about family systems, and um, he found research to support that 96% of us were raised in a dysfunctional home. And dysfunction can mean, any number of things. It can mean severe, um, or it can be sort of moderate or mild dysfunction, but anything that involves any kind of emotional or physical or emotional abuse or neglect. And it can be any range on that spectrum of those things. And I'm putting my hand up. I'm in the 96%. I definitely was raised in a home with lots of different forms of dysfunction and lots of different forms of pain. And what happens to those of us who are raised in any kind of dysfunction is that there's a piece of us that stays very hidden and stays very small and unhealed unless it's really, you know, healed in a number of ways over a number of years, and um, things getting resolved. And what I've found to be true is that, we can be semi-resolved, in our own self, semi-healed in our own self before becoming parents, but that once we become parents ourselves, it's a whole other like round. It's like the wheel comes all the way around, and so many things are kicked up when we become parents, which is why I talk a lot about, parenting triggering us. And if when your emotional back is against the wall, if you hear yourself or notice yourself saying or doing things that are upsetting to you because they're the things that were done to you, it's because it's a whole other round of facing things that need to be healed again from your own childhood. And all of us have an inner child, right? All of us have an inner child that needs healing and needs attention. And what I want to say is this. Oh, Tamika, hi. I'm very happy to be sharing this. I feel like it's been a long time coming, and I feel like I'm just going to pause here for a second. Um, so here's the truth. Like, if you guys in this group need tips on how to stop fighting in the back seat, or you need tips on how to like get your picky eater to eat, or you need tips on like how to get your child to sleep, right? Like, I have ideas for you that are rooted in empathy and rooted in a healthier way of connecting with your kids. But those are things that frankly, you can Google them. You can look them up on Pinterest. Like, I just am being very called to do the deeper work here and to at least talk about the deeper work and to acknowledge so many of you, maybe all of you in this group, I don't know. Um, but I'm feeling very called to talk about these very real underlying things in a way that I hope is healing to you and helps illuminate your path for creating healthy connections in your own family. You can look up, sleep tips, and you're going to find a bazillion articles about it. And I have written some of them myself. But who is talking about, when you come from a home of dysfunction, how to not recreate that in your own home? Like, all the tips in the world aren't going to help you with that, right? It'll give you like the outer work, the like what to do, which I think is helpful, but it's not going to help you have a perspective on what is actually like what's feeding all of it, what's feeding the the ways that we do our knee-jerk stuff that don't feel good and don't sound good and make our kids upset and make us upset at the end of the day, and then drive us to do all of the things that we do to numb out because it's so painful, right? Whether you're sober or not, like whether you're picking up the drink to numb out or you're or you're picking up the extra coffee, or you're picking up the online shopping, or you're picking up the, you know, beating up on yourself. Like, they're all process addictions. They're all cycles of how we numb out, because when we notice ourselves doing painful things, like, it's so hard for us to just sit in the pain of that. And I hear this from such smart parents all the time. This isn't about being educated or being smart. It's about just having awareness, self-awareness around what it is we're doing and the why. And yeah, so I just feel really called to talk about this stuff, especially because I know that this whole coronavirus situation is creating a lot of tension and a lot of pain in families. You know, you're being faced with being with your kids and with yourself in a way that you've never been called to do, most likely, right? Even if you stayed home with your kids when they were born, you before you went back, you know, before your maternity leave, or whether you stayed at home, like, staying home and taking care of a baby, and maybe you're doing that now. That's the most, I would say, similar time to this. And for many of you, I know your kids have already started school, and you're like, wait, I'm back in this situation where I'm trying to be at home with my kids, and the kids can't even have play dates now. It's really, really stressful. And so what I want to circle back to right now is I was talking about your inner child being wounded, and and noticing also, and this is all, like, I'll be honest that, like, this stuff it's hard for me to talk about, even in a teaching capacity, because I can't see your faces. I don't know. I don't want to be triggering people. And I also, you know, this is stuff that I continue to deal with myself. So it's actually really vulnerable for me to even be talking about it, even if I'm not sharing my details of everything. Like, I'm definitely, this is sensitive material. It's sensitive to me too. And I know that when I feel that way, I'm not the only one. I used to think I was the only one, and it's not just me. And you know, reading that number today, that 96% number of 96% of families are dysfunctional, I'm like, oh, not only am I not the only one, I'm actually in a majority, you know? So I want to really get back to something that's important for me to share with you. So we all have this inner child in us. And most of us, especially if you grew up in dysfunction, had your heart broken maybe once, maybe multiple times by the time you were, I'm going to conservatively say 10. For most of us, it was probably younger. By the time I was 10, I had my heart broken 5 distinct times. And that is pain that children are not equipped to deal with. And they're left to kind of parent themselves through it, because their parents are not equipped to help them through it. They wouldn't have experience that kind of pain in the first place if their parents were equipped to help them deal with it, right? So we have the inner child wounded in us. And then the other thing that happens, and this is where the parenting piece comes in, is that we also have an inner parent. And our inner parent is how we talk to ourselves when we are feeling upset, or even when we're feeling happy. Like, if the idea of inner child kind of freaks you out, I get it. Think about your inner child as your true self, or your authentic self, or just your emotional self, the part of you that's intuitive, the part of you that knows, that emotional part of you. If that part of you is coming out, whether it's in joy or in pain, your inner parent, which is the way you were parented, it's all the self-talk, it's all the messages, is going to be talking to that other part of yourself. You have this whole internal thing. You may not even be aware of it most of the time, but it is happening. You talk to yourself for having your reactions and your emotions in a certain way. And I guarantee you that however you are parenting yourself, the way your inner parent operates is the way that when your emotional back is against the wall, you are parenting your actual child, your actual children who you gave birth to or adopted or have custody of in some way. All right. That is the dynamic. And the real work here is about recognizing, how are you talking to yourself? How are you soothing yourself? What are those messages that even come up? Like I said, whether you're in joy or pain, when you're in joy, is there a piece of you that says, oh, who are you to show off? Or who are you to be so big? Or shut up, you don't deserve that, right? That's a really important voice to not listen to, in the sense that it's true, just to be aware if that's going on. And most of us, if you don't experience it in joy, you will experience it in pain if you come from a family of dysfunction. The pain, when you feel the pain and you feel anger, you feel resentment, you feel shame, you feel guilt, the voice that comes in is, of course, you deserve that. Or why did you think you wouldn't get that? You're getting exactly what you deserve. That kind of talk is much more common for us when we're feeling pain. And if you find yourself unable to healthfully address your own actual children when they are having a big emotion, whether it's really excited or it's really scared or it's really angry or your child is really frustrated, you don't know how to effectively handle it. Whatever you're doing isn't working. That's why. It's because the way that you learn to do it is the only way you know how to do it. And some of those messages were taught to you directly by how your parents parented you, and some of them were caught. Some lessons we are taught and some are caught. Some are just like messages that kind of float around in the house as we're growing up, like it's not okay to fill in the blank, right? It's not okay to have a big feeling. It's not okay to be in more pain than your sibling who has some sort of disease or some sort of illness, mental illness even, right? There are all sorts of dysfunction, you guys. It's not just about, people hear the word dysfunction, I think, and cringe a little bit and deny it because they're like, well, that's like alcoholism or drug abuse. And I didn't have any of that. Okay, but what kind of other dysfunctions are there? There's the dysfunction of being emotionally overlooked, right? There's the dysfunction of being a sensitive child and the parents have no patience or tolerance for that. And so you're forced as a sensitive child to kind of buck up. There's the dysfunction. I mean, it comes in so many flavors. There's this dysfunction of being raised alongside of a sibling who had special needs. And so again, you're overlooked. And what we learn to do, I was raised in one of those houses where I was overlooked because there were other people in the house who needed more than I did, and everything looked good on the outside for me, good enough. And I became really, really good at looking good on the outside, and so nobody knew what was really going on inside. The result of that is that we really lose touch with what's actually going on with ourselves. And it really impacts how we parent our own kids. Truly, truly, truly. So that is the kind of conversation that I am being called to have. That's the kind of information that I want to be sharing. And if you find that you're not right for this group or you're not right for my email list because I'm taking this turn toward my authenticity and what I really have to share and help you with, then no hard feelings. You can leave the group, you can get off my email list, all of that stuff. I will be weaving in, how do you deal with your kids in a healthy way, given that your instinct or your patterning from your first family might be an unhealthy, dysfunctional habit. I will get into that. But I'm not going to be handing out Band-Aids. I'm not going to do it. That's not going to be what I'm going to be talking about anymore. I just think there's so many other people talking about that stuff that I don't need to do it. And it doesn't feel authentic to me. What feels authentic is having the real deal conversations. So I hope that is going to help some of you. Tamika, you've got a question. Your two younger girls are acting out a lot now. They're 4 and 5, and in public they scream out. Is this normal? It's really hard for me to answer about things being normal or not, because I have so many questions, Tamika, about like what is happening around their crying. Like, do they just walk outside of the house and start crying? Or are they, I have no idea. If you can give me a little bit more detail about what's happening um, around them crying, then that I could possibly talk to that. Um, them acting out a lot right now would be normal. I'm sure that you're under more stress. Well, I'm not sure. I can't assume anything, but maybe you're under more stress with all of the coronavirus stuff that's going on. Maybe your life hasn't changed that much. Maybe you always worked from home. I don't know. But I would say that if you've seen an increase in your own stress and you're seeing an increase in their acting out, those two things are related. That our kids mirror back to us what, or reflect back to us what we're feeling. They're very, very sensitive creatures, our little kids. And, you know, if you put a baby, an infant even, in a room and people are yelling, not even yelling at the baby, but they hear yelling, their little systems will react like alarms. They react to every bit of stress that's going on around them. So it sounds to me, Tamika, like, okay, anytime, anywhere around people, in a crowd. So if the crowd is loud and they're feeling overwhelmed by being in a crowd, then they're crying, and both of them crying and screaming. One might set the other one off. That's totally possible. Um, and if it's really loud and overstimulating to one of your kids and it's um, setting one girl off, then the other girl might be set off by the other one, and they're feeding off of each other in that way. So one of your kids sounds like, at least one of them, maybe both of them, are sensitive to being in a crowd. Maybe they feel the stimulation of the crowd, or maybe they feel, maybe you're nervous in a crowd, maybe things are just too intense when they're in a crowd. There's something about it that they're telling you isn't working for them. And part of your job as their mom is to figure out what it is that is not working for them. What I would say is that anytime a child is crying or screaming, it means something is wrong. It's really an alarm that they are sounding. And part of the job of being their mom, you for your girls, me for my kids, everybody's job for their own parents, is to figure out and to crack the code of what is going on. So I'm going to tell you a personal story that when my son was an infant, anytime I would put him into his car seat, he would cry really, really hard. And somebody who I love very much, someone in my family, said to me, "Oh, that's normal. Babies just cry. Babies just cry. That's just normal." And I was like, "No, they don't. They don't just cry. They cry if there's something wrong." And I want to figure, and I would take him out of his car seat and he would be fine. He'd be up against me and he'd be fine. And then I'd put him in the car seat and he wouldn't be fine. And my choice, because I lived in a place where I could walk, or it was easier to take the car, but I could walk if I gave myself more time. I was like, I'm not going to put him through that. He can't even tell me what's wrong. He's telling me something is wrong. Something about the car seat is not working for this baby. I'm going to take him out. I'm going to hold him. He was fine when he was being held. He wasn't trying to manipulate me. He wasn't trying to pull one over on me. He was an infant. And it turns out that my son had something really unusual, which is called silent reflux. Reflux is when kids are, spitting up a lot. Well, when you don't see the spit up, if your baby's spitting up a lot, you're like, "Oh, my baby spits up a lot," and they're probably uncomfortable. People will talk to you about that. My baby wasn't spitting up, but what was happening was inside. So it was coming up and it was going back down. It was never coming out. So it's called silent reflux. He would scream anytime he was in that back position because it was basically causing him heartburn every time. And for somebody who loved him very much to tell me, "Oh, babies just cry sometimes," tried to make it okay for me to ignore the baby's crying. And I knew in my bones that I was not about to ignore my baby's crying. Not even an option for me to ignore my baby's crying, because my particular brand of dysfunction in my own home, one of the brands, was overlooking me being overlooked, my emotional needs being overlooked. And if anything, when I became a mom, my mission was I am not going to overlook my kids' emotional needs. Not. I'm going to lean in and pay attention. And maybe I overdid it. Maybe I overcompensated in certain times. I'm sure I did. But I was not going to let emotional stuff be ignored. That was a promise I made to myself as a mom and to my kids who had no idea I made that promise. So, so yes, Tamika, if they're crying and they're screaming out, they're telling you something is wrong. Is it a normal way for a child to tell you something is wrong? Yes. Is it normal for them to cry out or scream when they're in public? It's not a good sign. It means they're unhappy. It means they're not okay. Does that make sense? It means that they're not okay and they're not happy, which means it's time to lean in. If your kids are crying, really crying, not doing the like wah, 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 fake crying. If they're doing a real cry and they're really upset, then that is an invitation to you to figure out what's going on. There is something wrong. Something. I'm not sure what that is. That would take more back and forth to figure it out. But I hope that that at least gives you the inspiration to become a detective and look into it. Maybe they're going out when they're too tired. Maybe your kids are hungry, or they're being upset. I wouldn't just give them food as an answer to everything. I don't think that's a way to really lean in, but really look at what's going on. It's an invitation. Hey, Julia, good to have you here. Also, Tamika, I want to say that it's stressful to you. If it's stressful to you, then it's worth looking at as well. First of all, what is it sparking in you? What is making it stressful for you? Is it the not knowing? Is it feeling out of control? Is it feeling embarrassed in public? Any of those things might create stress for you. So as parents, it's really important for us to distinguish what is ours and what is theirs. Because we don't want to just hand over our issues to our kids, right? Um, and at the same time, I would say don't ignore a child who's crying. It's not a healthy thing to do. There you go. Okay, Julia, I'm doing okay. It's really nice to have you here, and I'm kind of feeling my way through this crisis, just like everybody, and trying to figure out how I can be of great service, my best service to everybody who wants to use this as a time to look at their parenting, to lean in a little bit, maybe a lot. This corona virus has really forced everybody to look inward, to slow down, to see what's working, to see what's not working, to use it as a time of self-reflection. And my experience tells me that people are either going to use this as a time to self-reflect more, or they're going to use it as a time to numb out more. Whatever is your standard operating procedure. If you're somebody who tends to reflect, you're probably going to reflect more. And if you're somebody who tends to numb out, you're going to numb out more. I would say as a parent, if you're being given an opportunity to look at this as a wake-up call, take it, because this is like a once-off, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really get real with yourself and get honest about what is working and what isn't working and where you want to make change. Because it's like, what is essential, right? What is truly essential? This word keeps coming up. Who are essential workers? What are essential businesses? My question is, what is essential to you? What's essential to your family? What kind of emotions do you want to be growing in your family? What kind of emotions are you trying to, prune out in your family? What kind of connections are essential to you? What are the values that are essential to you? I don't have the answers for you. I'm not saying my way is the right way. I'm just saying this is an undeniable opportunity for all of us to get clear on what's essential to us and to lean in and to get really, really aligned about what matters. Tamika, you're so welcome. I'm so glad that helped. I'm so glad. So good. And I also want to tell you that I'm going to be running I'm going to be running some more workshops in this group, and I'll also be posting my free webinar that I'm going to be retouching in the next week, in this week. So I'm excited to do that with y'all. Julia is asking, would I recommend children's counseling if you can't figure out what's wrong? Sure, sure. Yeah, if you feel like you've kind of touched on all the things that are in your um, awareness, and you've been building awareness, and you've hit a blind spot, you've hit a dead end, you keep hitting dead ends, absolutely. It never hurts um, to get somebody else's input who can see things that you can't see. That's the beauty of a counselor or a coach or a therapist. A guide of some sort, whatever works to shed some light when you're feeling lost and dark. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. My only caveat about children therapists is that they focus really on the child. They don't typically work with the parents. And so I've had a lot of clients come through my program, and I only work with parents, right? I used to work with kids, and now I work with the parents only. I have a lot of people in my group whose kids are also in therapy. And so I know that the parenting coaching that's necessary to kind of put it all together needs to happen as well. So, yeah, like you have to, it's the you, like you are so much, right? It's you, it's your inner child, it's your inner parent, and then it's your actual child, right? And then it's your child in relation to you, your child in relation to their sibs. If you've got other kids, it's your child in relation to your spouse. It's you related to your spouse if you've got a spouse, right? It's this whole family system concept. But yeah, so I would say that putting a child in counseling or some sort of therapy, having them evaluated, sure, having a conversation with somebody, sure, but in addition, don't let that be the be all and the end all. Make sure that you're looking at the whole picture. It's so easy when a child is having a tough time to make that child what's called the identified patient, right? In the family, they're the problem, they're the thing that everything kind of spins around. If it wasn't for that problem, we wouldn't have all these other problems. But the truth is that the child, the way I understand it, is that the child who is presenting the most difficulty is usually reflecting other things that are going on in the family. They're just sort of the mouthpiece for it, if that makes sense. So just make sure that you're looking at it from all angles. Does that make sense? Okay. So I think I'm gonna pause here for today. It's really, really wonderful to be here with all of you. And again, as always, I just want to have real conversations about parenting. I get it. I know what it means to come from a first family that is dysfunctional. I know what it means to grow up in dysfunction. I know what it means to have kids who are not easy. And if I can help you in some way, I'm more than honored to do that. And I just do want to let you know that I have a parenting transformation program for people who are really want to do this work, who want to do this change and change course, change direction, make sure that you're, raising your kids in a healthy way. Even if you weren't raised in a healthy way, it's possible to make all of these changes. And my course helps people to do that. So if that's something that you're interested in looking at, please book a call with me. The offer is always available for the free session. And, we can look at whether the course is right for you or not, but there's no obligation to join the course just for booking the call. It's a free session no matter what. And I'm just, I really want to help people parent in a way that feels good and that actually works to put more healthy emotionally healthy people into the world. That's what I'm here to do. It's really loud and clear to me. I'm getting messages all over the place that this is what I'm here to do. So please invite anybody who you know who's struggling with their parenting, or maybe they're suffering in some way. Maybe they come from a home with dysfunction of some sort. Again, I'm not only talking about drug or alcohol addiction. And also, to be clear, I'm not a drug or alcohol counselor. So if you are somebody who is, a current addict or suffering, and you're active in your addiction, this group is not a recovery program. I just want to be really clear that I am here to help people who are already in recovery, who are looking at the dysfunction that they come from and want to heal themselves while raising their own kids. So I hope that message is clear enough. And for anybody who is, actively struggling with their own addiction, I do recommend, the best programs that I know of are all the 12-step programs. And you can start up by looking AA, and they're doing online free meetings now as well. So that would be a good place to start if you're not already in some sort of treatment. I'm just not prepared I'm not prepared to do drug and alcohol counseling in this format. It doesn't feel right to me. Okay, so that's what I'm here to do. I'm here for you guys. Please invite other people to this group. It's and again, if this group, if it doesn't feel like this conversation is the one that you want to be having about parenting, and you want to pull the Pinterest thing, you want to be doing the lighter weight stuff with your parenting, that's fine. But this is going to be the real deal conversations about parenting. So you've been warned. You've been given ample heads up. And it's not going to be a bummer, it's not going to be a bummer of a conversation. It's going to hopefully the realness of it, the authenticity of it is going to create the lightness. That's what I've always found is on the other side of being real and being honest and being gritty is it allows you to shed light on the parts of you that have been hidden or have been dark. And that light creates lightness. Shedding light on what has been kept dark and quiet creates levity. And my whole life, people have been telling me to lighten up. And, I'm not somebody who is just going to be like happy, bouncy cheerleader all the time. I've got some real stuff that I carry around with me. And if I don't address that, and I'll be talking about practices of how to do that, but if I don't address it, that's what makes me heavy. The lightness is when I shed light on that stuff, I talk about it, and then my heart is lighter. So I'm delighted to have anybody who wants to be here. Please invite people who it would help. And I'll be checking in, and I'll be setting up some challenges and some workshops that I hope are really, really helpful for you, and also doing some daily practices. Thank you, Tamika. Thank you, Julia, for your questions today. I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody's questions. Doesn't look like I did. And I will see you next time. And again, if you want to go ahead and book your call, it's a free session, and I'd be delighted to hear from you. Thanks. See you later. Bye.